Hi, I'm Ian Taylor.
And I'm Norrin Rad.
And you're listening to the Marvel Card Collectors Podcast.
Before we start the episode, we want to remind you that next week is our first birthday and also our 50th episode.
We'd like to get as many folk on board for the party as possible. So please, in the coming days, like our page, our tweets, our posts, share with friends, and post on forums.
We promise you, it's going to be a great episode. Until then, back to this week's show. Enjoy collecting, everybody.
Norrin, hit the music. Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Taylor, and welcome to the Marvel Card Collectors Podcast, brought to you by the Marvel Cards Fan Collective, an awesome community of card collectors and creators. You can find our two groups on Facebook, details of which are at the end of this podcast, so come check us out. With me is my co-pilot in all things Marvel cards. If you agree to meet him at the Avengers Cafe for breakfast, he'll MC you there in the morning. It's Norrin Rad.
That was good. That was good. Another good pun.
That was brave.
Well, man. That was really... very ballsy.
I think good is subjective on that.
It is. I don't know. Yeah. I found it good.
It is good. Thank you. Thank you. You're very good at laughing at my poor puns.
It's what a co-host does. If I had a drum, I'd really participate. But
at this point, we should probably have already edited in a drum roll. We should
have done this.
Yes. One of those. Yeah.
I think I'm going to have to. I'll find it.
You'll find it. You'll do it. You'll do it.
I'll do it.
Yeah, you'll manage it.
I'll write myself a note right now.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are listening to us and whenever you are listening to us. Hope you're well. So the reference at the beginning of this episode is so our backgrounds and our experience, I guess, would be on the kind of the more Marvel card art based sets. I think you'd agree, Norrin?
Yes,
kind of
for sure.
Where we've come from, and your character pretty much doesn't appear in any MC movies. So
why you got to say it like that? You don't have to say that. Why you got to bring up sore subjects? You know that hurts my feelings.
At least when he did appear in a movie, although it wasn't MCU, you had Lawrence Fishburne doing the voice.
Yeah, that's okay.
That's pretty.
I would have preferred. It was cool. I prefer Jug Jones. He's a great actor. Pan's Labyrinth. I think he should have. Lawrence Fishburne's great. Just I don't know. Give it to the actor who's doing the work. I don't know. Yeah, am I saying something controversial? Probably.
No. Well, it was motion capture. It was in the noughties. It's different times.
Oh, there was some it was all on screen, baby. There was makeup, plenty of prosthetic makeups. Actually, I saw some guy selling the headpiece from the movie.
Really?
Oh yeah, wow. A Doug Jones wore. Yeah, yep. It's in the movie props. I'm not kidding. See, I messed all that up, but yeah, it's true.
Yeah, Jug Jones.
Jug Jones. Yeah. Jug Jones. That's what I call him. We're close friends.
He's in Star Trek Discovery now.
I know.
Plays,
another amazing
the character's name.
Yeah, and it's great. No, yeah. Lawrence Fishburne's amazing. I mean, he's a legend, right? Perfect voice for a surfer.
He has. So Lawrence Fishburne is not on this podcast. However, because No, I couldn't book him. To be fair, I think I upgraded us from Lawrence Fishburne. We have a guest with us today who is basically, we don't talk enough about the MCU side of things. And there are a lot of collectors of Marvel cards out there for whom it is their passion and their focus. We just don't really know many of those collectors. So joining us today is a young fella by the name of Brian Bode. Good afternoon, Brian. How are you?
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be on. How are you guys doing?
Doing really well. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Whereabouts are you joining us from today, Brian?
I'm in Rochester, New York.
Okay, nice part of the world. World. Lovely stuff. So a bit of background. So you dropped us a note maybe 10 days ago now, I think, on the podcast page. Ago, and said, I think you guys are missing a trick, basically. You're not talking about an area of cards that I'm really into. And I was like, you know what? You're right. We don't really talk about that, mainly because it's not something that we have a lot of experience in, and we don't really know anyone who goes in for MCU sets. There was a fellow in the UK who joined the group who was into them, but he kind of dropped off after a couple of weeks, and I haven't seen him posting much in the last few months. So Brian, thank you for being here and flying that particular flag. Tell us kind of tell us about your relationship with cards, first of all, because we had a quick chat beforehand. I think it's really interesting, your background and how you've come into it.
Yeah. I grew up a baseball person, big time. What got me into it when I was about 10 years old, 40 years ago, was my best friend's older brother, who was about 5 years older than my best friend, same aged, used to bribe us with baseball cards to go do his paper route, so that he was like a big star athlete, and he would rather listen to The Who, which was his favorite group, and, talk and make out with girls, and we would do the paper route because we were little kids, and he used to bribe us. And my first recollection of cards was like 1968 Gus Bell and 1973 Rico Petrocelli and John Candelaria and these baseball players, and he would never give us any of the good ones, but that's kind of what started it. And from there, in the early 80s, Rochester is the AAA team for the Orioles, so I got to see Cal Ripken when he was a Red Wing, and got a lot of Cal Ripken rookie cards. And then there was the debate between who's better, him or Mattingly, and which cards were better, and it was all about acquiring the Topps, the Fleer, the Donruss versions, and collecting multiple versions. And I didn't care so much about the sets, even though I built a lot of sets in the 80s. I didn't care about it. It was about collecting the star players. And, and then speculating in the late 80s on, the Dwight Goodens and Darryl Strawberries and Swindells and Tartable and all these players trying to hit a home run, trying to hit the next big thing. I then went into the military and kind of got away. I also collected comics. Every year for Christmas, I'd get an Amazing Spider-Man subscription with the little brown wrapper.
Nice.
That's really cool.
So I had like every issue of Spider-Man from like 150 to 240, but I sold those when I first got out of the military. Slight regret, but we move on. When I was just a collector and was just kind of doing my own thing, and then I was going to be a dad, and one of the things I'd wanted to do, which is just very traditional. It's just kind of one of the things you do, is I wanted to put together a Mickey Mantle collection I knew I was going to have a couple kids. I have two boys who are 20 and 17. So I put together a run. It took years to do it, but like every Mickey Mantle from 1955 Bowman to 1969 Topps, and had one put away for each kid. And it took, like I said, years. They're mid-grade, like 3, 4, 5. Grading is much more prevalent in sports cards than non-sports. And there are times where you would buy a card that you think is excellent, but then there's a big crease down the middle of it. So you would have fights with people. This card is not, excellent. So I come from a place where grading just takes care of a lot of problems. There's no debate, no discussion. This is what they say it is. Go with it. Price it accordingly.
Yeah.
I had always wanted to dip my toe into non-sport. The X-Files movie, the 6 autographs that came out, the 3 nerds or whatever they are, the Smoking Man, Mitch Pileggi, and whatever the other one was. And my girlfriend, who became my wife, we were really into Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But there was no Buffy autograph, so why would you collect Buffy? I mean, Cordelia was hot, and Xander was funny, and Willow was cool, and all these other people, but like, why would you collect? Like, it was really annoying that there was no Sarah Michelle Gellar autograph for the longest period of time, so I stayed away from those. But I'd always wanted to dip my toe into it a little bit.
Yeah.
I showed my oldest kid the Mantle collection with this abundance of pride and all that. He couldn't care less. He just couldn't care. I showed him when he was like 7 or 8, and he was like, he couldn't have been less interested. And it was kind of a crusher. And it didn't totally satisfy me. I was born in 70 and he stopped playing in 69. Like, I never saw Mickey Mantle play. Like, I wanted to do something that if I'm going to give them something, I want to give them something they like. So one of the things that we were getting into were the Marvel movies. And when Iron Man came out in 2008, my kids were 8 and 5, and they loved that movie. They totally, and then you go to Walmart and you see the Lego sets and the T-shirts and the lunch boxes, and you see the little rubber boots, and the sneakers with lights in them and all that other stuff. Like, it's omnipresent. It's everywhere. Yeah. And their little friends were into it. They were into it. And I was like, you know what? Robert Downey's, I like Robert Downey Jr. I always liked the movie Less Than Zero, where he played a drug addict, not a stretch.
Yeah.
But that's a good one.
But, I was like, all right, I'm going to start collecting Robert Downey and Jeff Bridges and, the dude, and
the dude.
And just kind of got into it. Now, obviously, there wasn't as much selection then, but there was also the X-Men cards, the Hugh Jackmans, the Famke Jansens, the
Rittenhouse set, yeah.
Some of the other people from the X-Men movie, Kelsey Grammer, people like that. So we started slowly on that, but we ended up selling the Mantles. We ended up, I'm not sure, I don't think they've appreciated much. There's a ton of Mantles. I had people at I used to go to the National Card Show every year for baseball and sports. And a lot of vendors were like, yeah, we buy them, we sell them and stuff, but there's a lot of them. A lot of them got thrown out by the moms, but there's still a ton of them. And if you go to table, there's thousands of these things. And unless you buy something that's way more expensive than what I wanted to do, to get like a real high grade Mantle, like I just didn't feel it. So I was like, I wanted to go in another direction. And the Marvel movies, they stoked me. It was cool. You'd always seen like, Bill Bixby, Incredible Hulk. You'd always seen like attempts to put these characters to life. And now MCU was actually doing it, and it was amazing. And, even the Tobey Maguire and the Andrew Garfield and some of the other stuff that wasn't technically MCU had its good points, had its bad points, but it was still cooler than a lot of the other stuff. So we just started getting into that, and we had cards that had some value, and we started buying a lot of Robert Downey Jr.'s, and we started buying a bunch of the Jackmans, and we started buying some of the other stuff, and it's just kind of taken off from there. And then my kids are really into it. I'm really into it. And 95% of what I do now is the MCU. There's still a Gretzky here or there. There might be a Jordan here or there. But, for the most part, it's almost all MCU.
Wow, that's amazing, man. That's fantastic. And those are your heavy hitters, right? Especially on the MCU side. Those are the big markers, right? We had a guy in the group who had those autos graded at 10s. I think he's from China or Japan.
Yeah, he's I know that his name comes up as the characters, so I don't actually know how to say his name, but he posts occasionally, and he has. So I think that first Iron Man set was Rittenhouse.
2008 Rittenhouse.
Yeah, that's right. And then it went over to
Iron Man 2 was Upper Deck with Whiplash autograph.
Yes.
The Jon Favreau, the changing from Terrence Howard to Cheadle.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and he had some major autograph hits, and that was the first time, because I only know very little about autographs and their hits, right? I think for looking at original art cards like Marvel Masterpieces and all that stuff, it's really like red parallels, printing plates, and the autos for us, and sketches really are the main, like the one hit per box. So for you guys, what's the one hit per box for you guys? Is it the autograph?
The autographs looking for? The autographs don't come one per box. You can get sketches. You can get for something like Endgame, they have these shadow box cards, which are certainly not a plate or a sketch or an autograph. Usually it's every couple boxes. It seems like in some of the Endgame stuff, you may get like 3 or 4 autographs in a case.
Okay.
But you might get like one or two really big ones, and then you might get a couple, lesser characters or whatever Upper Deck uses to fill out their autographs list or whatever they can acquire.
Wow.
That sort of thing. But it varies. There are some that are really great. Guardians of the Galaxy, Iron Man, the Avengers, Captain America Civil War has a pretty good signing. And then there's some that are not so good, like Spider-Man Homecoming, other than Michael Keaton, is kind of weak.
Yeah.
Black Panther was really bad. And some others, like Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is kind of mediocre. But,
I'm surprised they would put out a set without the main hitters on there as autographs, because I'm assuming that's the main pool for you guys.
Yeah, like Captain Marvel, there is no Brie Larson. Black Panther, there's no Chadwick Boseman.
That's crazy, man.
And there's no Paul Rudd.
Wow.
Paul Rudd hasn't signed. He signed for Parks and Rec, whatever that show was he was on.
Yeah,
But he hasn't signed a Marvel card as of yet. And obviously Scarlett Johansson hasn't signed. Mark Ruffalo hasn't signed. So it would be nice to put together a complete Avengers, the core Avengers, that sort of thing. But I mean, it seems like the train is rolling for what they do have, and a lot of people are really geeked on it. It's interesting you said that one of your big hitters was from China, because probably I've sold a couple things to get even bigger things.
Yeah.
And I would say, of the last 7 autographs I've popped on eBay, 5 of them have gone to either China or Japan, which shows that there is it's not just America that's collecting. And if you look at basketball, some of the Michael Jordan inserts, there's some really cool, semi-tough, but not really that tough, like Thunder and Lightning, and some of the just sets from Fleer and Flair, and some of the mid-90s sets. Some of those cards are going for hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And I think a big part of it is there's a lot of people in the Far East that just love Jordan are buying his cards and have insane collections and are really moving, raising high tide rises all boats kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think it's really good that these MCU cards have a big following in the East, because relatively speaking, there's still not that much of it being made.
No. It's still new. I mean, it's this is you catching the wave at this point. I mean, the wave definitely would have been in 2008 with the signing of the Iron Man and Robert Downey Jr. and everything. But this is definitely, I mean, Avengers Endgame had a lot of pull to it. I remember people being pretty excited on blowout forums, and we had a couple people in the group. I don't know what do you think is the next big wave for what would you like to see as a next product for the MCU?
I think the stuff that's out right now, I think is going to be really big. I think there's a big emotional attachment for Endgame and for Infinity War. I think because of a lot of big buyers that are in the Far East, that next, not Black Widow that got pushed back, but I'm missing the name of it. The Asian-based movie that's coming out.
Oh, Shang-Chi?
Yes. I would really be curious to know who the actors are that are going to be in that and how popular they are. Are they like Chadwick Boseman's who are going to become popular? Or are they established and they're big over there? If that's the case, then the autographs probably will be very well received. I definitely think it matters. I've been blown away, and I think it reinforces the idea. If you've ever seen the videos that my kids have of people that theaters of all these different languages, of people getting excited when Thor comes in Infinity War with Stormbreaker, and basically comes in and starts kicking ass and taking names, or when Captain America steps out from the subway and that sort of thing. There's all these videos of just, here's Turkey, here's Japan, here's Russia, here's
all the international trailers.
No, people that snuck in cameras into theaters and recorded like a rock concert sort of environment.
Yeah,
that
kind of
people
reaction.
got really excited that there are fans in all these different countries. I think it bodes well for these cards, which are still fairly limited. You know what I mean? And one other thing from like the sports side of it is that like Beckett, when a big player retires, like Jeter or Ripken, they do like a tribute episode, a tribute issue, like an entire issue just on Cal Ripken. And they'll list all of his cards. And this was years and years ago, and I think he still signs for some cards. But, I mean, back in the day, Ripken is over, 700, maybe even 1,000 now. I'm not entirely sure the number, but it's over 700 different autograph cards. Wow. Like, Downey has 1. Pratt has 1. I'm talking MCU. Thor is probably the most... Chris Hemsworth is signed for everything he's been in. And even with the dual autographs and the different variations, like, his total is probably 20 to 25. I mean, but there's enough demand for somebody like Ripken. I would say that the Marvel movies are the biggest pop culture thing in the last 10 years, and it's not even close.
Well, I'd say so. I mean, I have to say, I mean, I'm in the UK, and I've been to one baseball game, and I'm aware of it, and I'm aware of cards as a thing. But and I have heard of Mickey Mantle, but everything else you said in your first few minutes of talking was kind of like Klingon to me, because it's simply not something I'm aware of. Whereas whether I was in the UK or whether I was in France or whether I was in Turkey or whether I was in Japan or New Zealand, I would have known Hemsworth, Downey Jr., that they have a global cultural reach, whereas baseball is very geo-specific. I mean, it always makes me laugh that the World Series is just the US.
Yeah.
Yes.
Always that bemuses Europeans no end. It's regarded as a very American thing that it would be regarded as the World Series with air quotes. So I find that fascinating. One thing that I find interesting is the mentality that comes. So when I know very few people who look at non-sports, and especially on the comic art side of it, as an investment. They collect for the joy of collecting. They collect for the set building. They collect because they're into a certain character. And these are for the art-based sets, so we're not talking about anything with a photograph on. And then you've got this kind of middle area that has a foot in both camps, which I think Star Wars is a good example of, in that you have an awful lot of photo cards. In fact, a lot of the sets are photo cards. I'm sure Greg from the Rebel Base Card podcast will correct me on this one. The majority of sets that I'm aware of are photo cards, but there are some sets that are art-based sets as well with Star Wars, but they pretty much all do have sketch cards in, and they all do have autograph cards in as well. And a lot of those are extremely big hitters as well. And Star Trek is pretty much all photo-based with big hit autographs, but even those guys from Star Trek, legends as they are, and even the ones who've passed away now, signed an awful lot of cards. So MCU is kind of a bizarre bubble in that Carrie Fisher signed an awful lot of cards and signed a lot of stickers that are still being issued on cards after she's passed away. And Harrison Ford, might not sign often, might not sign many, but he has signed on a number of sets. So you think about it from that perspective, then MCU is very much a very, very small bubble in that regard. So I guess if you're coming at that from where I kind of collect from, I'd be collecting them to have them, and I'd want them all. But I probably wouldn't, and this is just partly personal preference and partly because I just don't have the income to do it. I would find it very difficult to put a set together, especially now, given how, the supply versus demand side of things. And that does kind of touch on what I understand of the sports card market, because I've been getting into NFL cards for about 8 months now, just starting to dabble around at the edges. Yeah, thank you. and my goodness, it's just we talked about this on an episode about 2 months back, where someone asked us about whether investing and speculating would ever become a thing in Marvel cards versus sports card, and I said, and I still stand by this, but MCU could be the possible exception, that it's a very, very different in terms of the quantity of product there is. So I know from the NFL cards point of view that there are 30, 40, maybe 50 sets put out every year across the entire, because it's all Panini now, but they have all these big brands that used to be other companies. So they have Contenders, they have Donruss, they have Prestige, they have all these Flawless, Immaculate, all these. Whereas with the Marvel sets, even with the movies, you're talking maybe 8-10 a year, if you're lucky. Not that many.
Not that many at all.
I mean, it's a much smaller market for a start.
Yeah, probably less than that.
And the other thing that I find interesting is because Upper Deck have got the license, and they've got the license for the US, but they also distribute to the Far East. But that's kind of it. You know, so in Europe, a different company have license to produce cards on Marvel properties, and they don't have access to any of those autographs. They don't have access to any of that high-end licensed autograph stuff. They don't do sketch cards. They might do some sort of faux memorabilia cards at best, but that's it. And I can't speak for South America, you know, other territories. I just know for Europe. And oddly enough, I think that's Panini.
Interestingly enough, I really want to get into what you're talking about with the investing side of this, and you know, talking about distribution and so forth. Here's the thing, from my perspective, when it comes to Marvel cards that are based on original art, you're looking at a very small group of kids that grew up in the 90s that collected with Joe Jusko, with Julie Bell, Boris, Hildebrandt, all this kind of stuff. You're looking at a pretty small audience. The MCU side of this is an international audience.
Huge.
Do I think there's an international audience for the Marvel art-based stuff as well? Of course there is, 100%. But I feel like the MCU, and especially talking about the investment side, right? And what you're talking about, Brian, is looking at how these actors are kind of like these baseball players, right? Where you're kind of charting their career, you're seeing where they're going, especially when you're looking at the star of Black Panther, right, Chad? When you're looking at his work, right, when he relatively came onto the scene, he been in a couple of film festivals, shorter films and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, obviously a very good actor. But when he hit that role, that was the role that kind of defined a lot of his career and where he was going. That was kind of like charting, oh, this is this character. Here's this character to hunt for. But there's also the thing where it's like, I mean, honestly, we can all say there's no other person I think about when I think about Captain America other than the actor who plays Captain America, right? And Disney has done a very smart job of saying, this is the appearance for this character, right? This is what this character looks like. This is ingrained forever. We're going to use his likeness, right? Like your shirt, the shirt you have now, which is a rockin' shirt, right? You look at Chris Evans on there. Chris Evans' image in Disney will always be from those 10 years as Captain America. Always. That will be branded. That's trademarked. That's forever, right? Those are kind of, in a way, the original pieces for those characters, right? You have identities mixed in with those trademarks now of actual people. Yeah, I can see the autographs being the investment, especially for one that will carry on throughout time. That's the thing that I find interesting. We've had a similar experience with the Joe Jusko set, you know, in MM92, which kind of started this off for a lot of collectors. Joe Jusko doing that whole set kind of defined what Marvel Masterpieces was going to be and what it is today. When he came back, it's no coincidence that Marvel Masterpiece 2016 became the biggest set to come out and has brought up the conversation of investment
and speculation.
Which
happened on 2018.
Which happened on 2018. And I see that being a pattern as we move forward, especially with MM20, which I'm sure we'll find out hopefully soon about. But I find it extremely interesting what MCU has over the original art. And I do think there's a lot of investment in MCU from this standpoint. I'm also wondering, are grades important for your autograph cards?
They are. I know a lot of your core viewers will probably cringe at that. But I come from the sports side where, PSA and Beckett are considered the top dogs as far as, grading and that sort of thing. And grade matters. And like I said, there's a lot of people that are, especially in the older cards, like the Mantles and all that sort of thing, like they're trimming cards, they're bleaching cards, they're doing things that, aren't above board. So the grading, is it perfect? No, but it is an unbiased, you would hope, company that basically, gets their money when you send them the card, and they're going to try and be as objective as possible. And they might not catch everything, but at least they're, a doorman to the club. You know what I mean? They're like, to prevent as much unseemliness, getting through as possible. So you have a little bit more insurance than something that's not graded, that it's above board. The Rittenhouse cards don't have the holograms and that sort of thing. So one of the things that I wanted to do was grade all my Downies, and basically, the fact that they're graded with a particular number, which they can go back in time and say, oh yeah, this was graded in 2010 or whatever, will give you a little bit of reassurance that, that if there is a problem where things start flooding the market, that, these were graded a long time ago. Grades matter. I had at one time, and I'm not trying to be anything, but at one time I had 13 of the Downies, and I sold off a bunch of the 7s. I basically kept most of the 8s, just about all of the 8s. But in a modern card, a 7's kind of a loss. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You expect everything to be 8 or better. So I was kind of disappointed to get 7s. But so then I sold some of them. I made a profit on all of them. But then I went and bought other stuff. I bought from Thor: The Dark World, like the Hemsworth Loki dual autograph. I thought that was a great card. It is. The Pratts, there's I think 6 Pratts. They're graded a 10. I have 5 of them. Like you would go and try and buy cards, and if they didn't get good grades, you could just resell them. Like one thing that has been frustrating me is the first original Hemsworth autograph on the original Thor movie. A lot of those cards are cut short, because I've probably sent in like 5 of them, and at least I think 3 of them have come back minimum size requirement.
Oh, really?
Like they won't grade the card because it's cut a little short. And then when I got graded, it actually made it through the grading process, but only got a 5. So I was disappointed by that.
But that's universal though, right? I mean, everyone's going to have that problem. Yeah. So that 5 might not be that bad.
You learn, well, then I think I got one as a 7. And I'm like, I'm going to keep it because I'm sick of grading this card. But just FYI, like the Thors, you got to watch the size on them. The only way you know that if you had tried on multiple times to get them graded, and they won't accept the card because it's cut a little short.
Wow.
So
I have to say, grading is coming in. Grading is coming in on the. We haven't done a grading episode yet, simply because we have at least one particular person we want to speak to on that regard who grades a lot of Marvel cards. And I'm just going to say hi, Amanda.
Amanda.
And we love Amanda. And she she does a lot of grading, and she hooked me up with this fine Black Cat PSA 10.
Nice.
Which is rather lovely. And I like them. I'm for my wheelhouse has been in the year since we've been doing this podcast, I've changed my mind about graded cards. I'm now completely 100% convert. The only cards I genuinely don't see the point of grading in terms of cards are sketches, but that's
100%.
That's just a me thing. But I have a massive comic collection yards away from where I'm sitting here, and none of them are graded because I want to be able to read the books. And for me, if you seal something, and I get from an archival point of view, but I don't buy them to invest. I buy them to read. I buy them to have fun, things like that. So I want to be able to touch them. But this is literally a front and a back. So it kind of makes sense to do. And a lot of character collectors, especially yourself included, Norrin, have started to go after these on just the commons and the base cards and the chase.
So basically, and here's the trick for grading cards for me, from my personal standpoint. It's that in the 90s, they were overproduced by hundreds and hundreds and thousands and that. Like, it's just ridiculous how much product is out there from cards that came out in the 90s. So for me, looking at population reports, looking at PSA, seeing how many are out there that are 10, the goal for me as a character collector is to say, okay, I got to get like some of my staples for my collection as 10s. Right. And the most premier set, if there was ever a set, in my opinion, that you invest in when it comes to Marvel cards, you're looking at Marvel Masterpieces. Just based on rarity, based on prestige, based on the name itself. That will be the set that will continue, long into the future. So going back and finding this card that was everywhere in pristine condition as a 10 from PSA, graded, nice, clean, that is for me a benchmark in a collection. That's me from that standpoint of getting something graded. Would I get graded maybe one of the modern cards? Like, I've seen a lot of collections where people get their autographs from MM16 or MM18, which is more of a premier set, which are like an edition of 10 cards, right? The autographs from the artist of that particular character of that particular card. They're getting those things graded and putting a premium price on them, especially where the market is now. I don't see that really working. A lot of the collectors I know are not going to pay a premium price on those, right? Because just to get one is worth it. You know what I mean? But to put a premium price just because it's graded on top of that, you're not really ensuring quality. You're just adding a premium price to something that will be sealed into a PSA grading kit.
I think with a lot of those newer cards, because they're quite thick, they very rarely get the high grades.
They rarely get the high
production
grades.
process, because they they are. I mean, you've probably seen them in different.
Yeah, I've seen someone have 9.5s BGS of those, and they're nice, and they're very rare to get that high of a grade. But you're already paying. I don't know if you know about those, Brian, about those prices for those crazy things, but they're like $800, $1,000, $1,200 for some of these autographs that are sounding like Jusco or Bianchi. And, right now the market's really high for them. They won't. No, and they're not graded.
The ungraded values.
So when someone finds a graded one and it's, adding $400 onto that price, people are going to be very wary unless they want that graded set, which is only maybe 2 or 3 of us right now. So that's the only reason I see that as being problematic for now. That might change in the future,
Yeah, I don't know a lot about those. Like I said, what brought me into this was just the excitement from like Captain America: Winter Soldier, unbelievable movie. Like I've had more. Yeah. I've spent hours with my boys, and we're trying to rank them as to where they all are and how great they are, and like Logan, where does that fit, and where does Winter Soldier fit, and where do the Avenger movies all fit? And for a long time we thought the first Avenger movie was like the perfect movie. We were trying hard to find like any sort of mistake, or glitch, or something that isn't right. Like in Game of Thrones, the coffee cup sitting on the table.
Yes,
we're trying to find something that was in there, and we're having a hard time doing it. So, but I'm sure the Marvel Masterpieces is great. And you can't collect everything, and I certainly don't have the income to do it. But yeah, what I'm focusing on, what's kind of exciting are some of the printing plate autographs that are coming out as well for the
I was
end game.
wondering about those.
I saw those. Yeah.
Yes, I need 2 to finish the Infinity War set.
Nice.
And I thought, well, Thanos is so audacious to try and get all the stones. I was like, what would be the toughest set to try and build? And I'm like, the printing plate set, there's only 4 of them. And I'm like, to try and get a set of all of those would be just ridiculous. Would be fun. So
one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah, so I mean that's why I joined EPAC, because there were several printing plates that were on there, and we went on there and started buying some product just so we would have kibbles to try and trade, or at least start a conversation.
Yeah.
Which got me into buying some Fleer Ultra Spider-Man and boxes of the Infinity War cards and whatnot. So, but we've acquired most of them. It's taken a while, but we've eventually worn down people, or they'll put them on ComC and they'll just let me buy them and stuff. So.
Yeah. Good. So you say we, is that you and your boys? Yeah.
Well, everything I do is for them, but they give their 2 cents in it as well, and I think it's a learning experience too, because obviously, yes, you should have your money in other things by far and away, but this is something as well that it gives them a chance to discuss and think about the future. And like I'm kind of a nerd. I like watching Antique Roadshow, and I like,
we invented it.
What really
that's true.
What really strikes me is that, some young woman was on there and was like, oh, I got this little silver ring. And they're like, you realize this is platinum and it's by Louis Comfort Tiffany. And this girl thought she had like a $20 ring and ended up being a $20,000 ring. And,
wow.
She starts sobbing right on set. You know what I mean? Like, I want to leave something, decent for the boys. And I want them to be excited for it too. I'm trying to tailor what I do. I'm not going to force Mickey Mantle on them. You know what I mean? If that's not what that's
really nice though. I think that's really nice. I mean, it's, I think it speaks volumes to your character, and, I'm sure other people listening have had the same experience where they've had to reassess and be like, am I collecting this for me? Am I collecting this together with somebody?
That's there you go. That's all you're having. No one's getting it's great. Else.
I think it's really lovely. Yeah.
So how much do you? Because did you start when Iron Man came out? Did you go in big buying product to get the autos at that point, or did you just go after the autos and start buying bulk product later?
I don't want to have a wall. I had, when I went into the military, I had like monster box after monster box, and even into the 90s before I had kids, like I tried investing in certain basketball players and certain football players and things like that. And, I had a box just full of Dan Marino stuff and a box of Michael Jordan stuff, like big monster boxes of, favorite players and whatnot. And over the course of time, people, I've culled down my collection. My entire collection is probably 200 cards. That's it. But you can believe that there isn't a one. The cheapest one is probably like $200 or something like that. Like, I would rather have something that's very tight and very powerful. And I don't collect sets or anything like that. I just go after the guys I want to go after, that sort of thing. Kind of like if you were going to collect on Antique Roadshow, a month ago, the big item of the week was Wizards, the Black Lotus, the
Magic the Gathering
cards, where a guy or a wife brought in a binder. She goes, yeah, my husband collects these. I was just curious what they're worth. $50. And they're like, no, this is worth $100,000.
The Alpha Black Lotus, or whatever it is.
With the little black dots and
that's the black dots, the misprint, all that good stuff.
Like, I didn't know anything about that. I wasn't into that sort of thing, but I was like, that guy did it right. So I'm trying to just collect, the autographs, or just stay, collecting the big inserts and that sort of thing.
Yeah. See, I'm the same way. I mean, my collection is not worth anywhere near that, but that's, as a character collector, I tend to, at least from my standpoint, and this is a good topic of conversation as well, is that if you're looking at cards that feature original art, you should go for one of one. If you're looking to create that investment, right, you should be looking for one of ones. You should be looking for the original art featured on that card, right? And then you're getting into artists, then you're getting into the higher end pieces as well, if you're taking that collection like to that next level. But similarly to you, I try to keep my collection very pristine, very tight, no extras, just because it helps me as a collector too. I don't overspend. You know what I mean? I know very specifically what I'm shooting for. It's hard to do that. You know what I mean? Like, I try to do that as well. Yeah. But that's amazing that you have that, man.
This from a baseball, and this was something, I didn't make this up. This is something somebody said to me a long time ago, and I thought it was valuable, was that like back in the day, and I don't even know if this still holds, but they said if you can, try and trade 2 or 3 Roger Marises to get a Mantle. Then you try and trade 2 or 3 Mantles to get a DiMaggio. Then you try and trade 2 or 3 DiMaggios to get a Gehrig, and then you could trade a couple Gehrigs to get a Ruth. Like you're always trying to go up the food chain, value, that sort of thing. So like it kind of gives you a feel of where they are in the hierarchy or the pecking order, that sort of thing. Yes. And I think one time on Roadshow somebody said, well, obviously, a 10 karat diamond is worth more than 10 1 karat diamonds.
Yeah.
So like I would rather I try and keep everything just very tight, and I try and say I only have this much space. What do I want to put in it? So
yeah, that's what's happening right now with us too. With like, I think if people were going to put something on a food chain, what do you think that food chain looks like for us? Because it's a little difficult right now because the art is kind of subjective, right? Because you don't have like legacy players. It's incredibly subjective for the original art thing. Yeah.
Well, and it changes. 10 years ago, it would have been a different answer. 5 years ago, it would have been a different answer. 5 years from now, it would be a different answer. The interesting thing is, so I'm going to come to that in a very circular fashion, as is my way. So with Marvel cards, I kind of go at it as an extension of my comic collecting, which is kind of a sprawling thing. So my Marvel card collecting tends to be similar. The only area of focus really is the Black Cat stuff, and even that, just by virtue of how many Black Cat cards there have been made, is pretty big. I mean, once you go outside your sketch cards, Norrin, you've still got all those base cards and chase cards. So that's where the number comes from, I guess.
Yeah, no kidding.
But the areas that I do now keep it tight, which I don't tend to do much at the moment because I'm focused on Marvel, are things like James Bond. So what I do with this is that I don't go for any of the base or chase. I just go for the autographs from Daniel Craig movies.
Oh, so clever!
That is a focus for me, and I do the same with Lost. I go for the autograph and the memorabilia cards. I do the same with the Battlestar Galactica TV series, and because I just simply there was a point about 5 years ago where I really didn't have the space for all this, and this is since we moved into a bigger place, my collection has kind of grown like that. So I think a lot of it is limited to where you live.
Yeah.
But I for my James Bond collection, I don't think it's achievable, not for me anyway, on my budget, to say I want to do that across all the eras of James Bond cards, because my goodness, Rittenhouse have put out an awful lot of product on the James Bond spectrum. So just going after the autograph cards, you're talking thousands of them, and it's pretty giddy just in the James Bond, Daniel Craig era side of things. So I kind of keep that tight. But in terms of the Marvel stuff, if you had that food, I guess what I'm saying is that food chain is quite easily apparent in entertainment properties, because a lot of it is to do with the pecking order of the casting.
Yep.
So, a Downey Jr. is always going to be, and I don't know if this is the case, but just as an example, maybe 3 Hemsworths, or, maybe, Hayley Atwell is, maybe 5 of her is a Chris Hemsworth. I don't know.
That's pretty cool. I love that.
I love that. Moment for Hayley Atwell. Okay, let's move on. Which actually, we'll put a pin in that. We'll come back to Marvel TV shows in a moment, because I wanted to ask you about that. With the art-based sets, though, it is so wholly subjective, and I think the only area you could apply it with a bit of a bigger canvas that would apply to more people is maybe from the point of view of the type of cards. So, but even then, the values differ greatly. So Marvel Annual, for example, a printing plate from Marvel Annual, which isn't original art, it uses art from comics or from other sources. So it's a lower cost set. You still just have 4 printing plates for each card, and yet you can get them anywhere from $20 to $40. Whereas the Marvel Masterpiece set, still just 4 printing plates for that card, not signed. You're talking $450 $500, $600, $700 for each of those 4 printing plates. So even when you go at it in terms of parallel type, it is related to how that set is perceived in that pecking order. So I guess you could look at it in that the sets are kind of like the actors. You know, you could argue your Marvel Masterpieces 2016 is your Robert Downey Jr. of the art sets. You could argue that your Marvel Annual is your third guy on the right from the Black Panther cast. You know, sorry, I'm fumbling because I can't remember any actors' names off the top of my head. But that's kind of where my head goes with it.
That's how I do it too.
Yeah, I don't know. So
that's what I'm thinking too, and I've had conversations with people because like right now it's very subjective. Like I think when we have more pieces and more Marvel Universes and more Fleer Ultra sets, people will start making that hierarchy a little more because now we're in that premium stage of our collecting, right? Where they're going to the age where it's all thicker cards, autographs, you know, printing plates, one-of-one pieces. Yeah. And I think that's maybe where it's going to start developing that ladder. That's so very apparent in the MCU right now. Yeah. At least from my perspective.
People overpay all the time on the Marvel art side.
People what?
Overpay all the time.
Yeah.
For non-graded cards.
Yeah.
You know, there's a wild spectrum of prices that people pay for stuff. You just look at eBay solds. Someone tries to put something on the group and they're trying to sell it for X amount, and someone will go and look at eBay solds and find the one that sold at $20, whereas everything else sold at $80, and so it was only worth $20.
Yeah. How is it with you, Brian? Is MCU like sales and stuff a little bit tighter?
Yeah, I don't think it varies. I think everything is creeping up, so I think it's a good place to be. It's not MCU, but the Hugh Jackman 2000 X-Men 2, the case incentive cards, that sort of thing. Like I remember buying those for like $199, and there was a guy who really, really needed it for a set or was a real big fan and ended up like doubling the money even after eBay fees by guys like, I got to have this 9.5, you know, Jackman. I ended up selling a couple of them to the guy, and the dual Hemsworth Loki, I know I bought one for like $200, but a lot of them were like $250 and that sort of thing when they first came out, especially because The Dark World wasn't that great a movie. But I could sell those. I have 3 of them, and I probably could sell them for like $900 to $1,000 now, because even some of the like Hemsworth with Lady Sif or something still goes for like $500, and the Loki card's a better card than that, you know. So I think they're all moving up. I think they're doing really well. I think it's insane, the Endgame product that's come out. They have like 3 different versions of almost every autograph card. Like a fairly rare autograph, a more medium autograph, and then a rare version, 3 different pictures. There's going to be different printing plates for each one of those. I think they Upper Deck really went full bore. As long as they don't keep making like MCU 10 sets, kind of like what Star Wars keeps making sets every year, even though there may not be any real new additional product. Like they just keep rehashing. Let's do a black and white set. Let's do one of these. Let's do one of these. So long as they don't keep killing the Marvel brand and don't do like MCU 11, MCU 12, MCU 13. You know, hopefully these won't be mass produced, but one can only hope. I'm thrilled every time a new list comes out and certain people aren't signing.
Yeah, because you're like, yep, I'm still good.
Oh, nice. Okay, that's interesting.
Yes. There's also variants too. Like you mentioned Star Trek before. Like Zoe Saldana, I think, has signed more for Star Trek than maybe she signed for the original Guardian set, but it's rare. It's incredibly rare to find the Zoe Guardians of the Galaxy 1. But in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, they're everywhere. But she only signed, it's like ZSP is what it looks like. She only signed initials. There was a person, if you go to Cardboard Connection, they talk about all the different sets and give their opinion on it. And they show pretty much pictures of all the different cards. The one card they don't have a picture of is a dual autograph with Karen Gillan from Doctor Who, and it's a dual autograph of Karen Gillan and Zoe Saldana.
Yeah, the sisters.
And that card is insanely rare, and I never thought I would own one. I just went on eBay a year ago, and some pawn shop or something had one $400, buy it now, and I really didn't want to spend the $400.
Yeah,
that card's worth over $1,000. Like, that card is incredibly hard, and they had it on eBay, $400, buy it now. I couldn't buy it fast enough. I didn't want to, but I had to.
Keyboard broke. You're like, no.
I'm glad you said that. I wasn't sure which way that was going to go. You said I couldn't.
Let me start working more now.
Yeah.
I had to buy that card. I was like, this person doesn't realize how incredibly hard this card is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
you got to jump on that stuff.
I was on that, and
Smart.
I think there's still opportunities like that as well. I think it's all about the passion. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of casual fans.
Yes.
Who are and if you look back at Hot Wheels and Barbies and G.I. Joes and all these things that people, they always say, like, find whatever kids love and hold it for 30 years and then just let it Migos. Like, I grew up with a lot of the Mego action figures. Like, I had almost all of those and loved those things to death. Like, to see them now in the boxes and stuff are like hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Like, I think these movies engender a lot of passion, and I think this will be one of the ways that people, if cards are still collected, hopefully, going forward forever, and with the relative scarcity and the fact that they're, as we've seen, they're being divested all over the place. Like I said, I'm selling a lot of stuff on eBay, and I'm selling more to foreign. I'm using the eBay global shipping program a lot. Well, because they're being sent to China and Japan. So I'm like, you know what? There's definitely a core over there that really likes those, and that can only help, especially when these are produced, relatively speaking, in much less quantities than your standard baseball, basketball.
Yeah.
The case numbers are just not as high as maybe. And that's why I think everything is kind of rising right now a little bit. I don't want to be overly optimistic, but I don't see stuff really falling even during this pandemic.
I watched a couple of different YouTube channels, some on statues, some on comic book grading and original art, especially from comicartfans.com. And they were saying they had a bunch of dealers on there for comic art, original art, and they were saying the same. They were like, they were expecting prices to kind of start dipping. I am seeing people selling collections because, unfortunately, job things and horrible situations are happening all around the world. But yeah, it's pretty steady for the most part, from what I recognize from the other hobbies as well. Yeah,
I was. Sorry, carry on. Sorry.
No, I was just saying. That's why with the group we have people from the Philippines who also have really impressive collections. And, we're always trying to get more international people, because when you start hunting for one of ones and for low numbers, the better the network, the better the collections are going to be, because these things do vanish into black hole collections, or they vanish across seas and we can't get to them. You know what I mean? And people maybe are not on social media or whatever. This really does kind of help. One thing I did want to ask before I give it to Ian, do you guys know the number of how many Robert Downey Jr. Iron Mans are out there, or like any of these autos? Does Rittenhouse give those numbers, or does Upper Deck give those numbers?
There's there on the blog forums, they've talked about it, and like different people have said that they think there's 250 of the Robert Downey face cards, and then there's supposedly like 150 of the. Rittenhouse lost the license, and they had more Iron Man cards, but it's the Iron Man suit. There's two versions of it.
Yeah, so the one with him with the glasses and the one with the suit, right?
Yes. So the one with the Iron Man suit, and I wasn't aware of this when it happened, but when they lost the license, they basically put out something that said it was either like $149 or $199. You could basically just mail them a check, and they would send you one of the cards because they just had to get it off their plate.
Wow!
So those were never issued in a pack. If you buy a box of Iron Man, the only one that you have a chance of getting is the Tony Stark one, and that one goes for a little bit more than the Iron Man suit one. It seems like the people that collect them prefer the Tony Stark face as compared to the Iron Man.
That's interesting. Maybe because the actor's actually being featured on the signature,
or because it was actually one you can get out of the box.
Right.
So Iron Man one is kind of a quirky story, never in a box. You just could buy it straight from the company, kind of thing.
But it's
also the rarity and the hunt is not there. Its
initial price in market this is quite of an interesting one because I've seen this before on price perception stuff. Is that if it enters the market with a relatively low price point, then that price perception follows it, even if the market lifts. It will always be at a disadvantage to something that was considered to be a lotto win of finding it in a box.
Interesting.
So that doesn't surprise me at all.
But they're both pretty expensive now, though. They're
I'm sure
they're well into the four figures now. So.
Oof. Wow.
So,
my goodness,
there's one on eBay that's been sitting there. The guy wants 5,000 or best offer, but usually some of them have been selling for around like 3. Okay. But I do think over time, I think it's going to be easily a $5,000 card.
Yeah. Wow.
That's amazing. How cool.
Oh, imagine the commission you'd lose from eBay on that. Thanks, eBay. I've started listening to it. I haven't listened to it for a couple of weeks actually, because Kevin St. Jack, good evening, Kevin, and he crosses quite nicely both sports and non-sports Marvel. He's very much in both camps. So he recommended the Hobby Hotline, which I don't know if you've heard of, Brian, but it's kind of a live call-in podcast, and the guys who do it all present different sports-based podcasts. And so they have people calling in who are collectors, but people also run other sport. You throw a rock and you can hit a sports card podcast. It seems we're the only one that I'm aware of focused on Marvel cards, and that's pretty cool. And they were saying a similar thing about the market didn't seem to be dipping at all. This was about 6 weeks ago. One of the other interesting things that caught my recollection earlier is when you were talking about the grades and the 7s, and you sold your 7s, is that they were talking about graded cards recently, and this is something we are going to get more into as an episode of its own thing, because we've only kind of touched on them. We've talked more on this episode about them than any episode so far, and they were saying that from a grading point of view in sports cards, a lot of the thinking at the moment with modern cards that you get graded would be to, when you get them graded, keep your 9s but sell your 10s, because 10s will always attract more of a premium on the sports card side, because they were saying that a lot of sports cards, because for whatever reason, either the volume of them or the way they're handled or etc., getting the 10s is actually quite difficult, even when they're quite largely produced. I just thought it was fascinating. They were saying that 10 was such a, if you get stuff back and you say you send in 10 of a card and you get 3 of them are 9s and the rest of them are 10s, they said keep the 9s for your personal collection but sell the 10s because you'll make more money. So I thought it was fascinating.
That's interesting. I would never think of that.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I never would think that. I mean, I would personally fund my 10s, fun to get 10s by selling 9s. You know what I mean? Similar to what we were talking about with Brian, selling a couple.
I'm not saying that that's the overall trend. That was just what they happen to be advising in that particular
fascinating.
So I've taken that out of context. What I'll do is I'll try and find that episode and I'll pop that on the tasting notes for the show.
So that'd be fun.
Go and have a look at it. But I think it's fascinating. I think there's a lot from the way that this, because I think we talked about this on that episode where we talked about the hobby recently, where we talked about the comparisons from what I understand of how sports cards work to how non-sports, and specifically the section of non-sports, which is Marvel cards, works. Is that it's chalk and cheese in that you have entire businesses that run based on sports cards. There are very few that do that on non-sports cards, and even them have a foot in the sports world. I don't think anyone can do it on the Marvel side.
No, I think for my hope for the future, and I'm hoping it's MCU that is part of this kind of thing, right? Is that right now we have sports, And we have Star Wars, we have Magic the Gathering, and we have Pokemon, right? My hope is that eventually when we go to Phase 5 for MCU and this trend continues, right, and becomes kind of as fixated as in the culture for the last 10 years, for the next 10 years, that Marvel cards becomes a main feature, right? I mean, Star Wars was able to do it. You collect Star Wars cards, that's a whole world of its own. Does that make sense? You know? Yeah. So I'm hoping that Marvel with its own podcast, right? Yeah. Well, that's what my hope is. I'm hoping that Marvel cards can reach that kind of plateau. Yeah. And, you know, I have seen a little bit of the MCU stuff, Brian, and I do think the MCU is probably what's going to carry it to that prestige. To be honest with you, I don't think it's going to be, and this is my personal opinion, obviously, I don't think it's going to be the original art, even though I would love it to take it to that level, but it's going to have to be the MCU cards that takes it to that. And you know what? We've talked about this before, Ian, right? Yeah. Can you go to a Target and a Walmart and a retail store and find some MCU cards? Absolutely. Can you find Marvel Universe or any of those guys anymore? No. Yeah. You know, the product that's out there, the product that people will be familiar with are going to be associated to these films. Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating. I don't know. Do you touch on the any of the properties that Marvel do that aren't filmed? So do you touch any of the Netflix sets in terms of the autos, or any of the MCU kind of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agent Carter, that kind of set?
I have not. I haven't watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I just haven't had time. I know between Arrow and Gotham and Supergirl and, you know, Legends of Tomorrow and all these different things, like there's something every night. Like I'm not able. I still would prefer to watch sports or, you know, movies or, you know, whatever. Play chess online, like whatever.
Looking for Starbucks coffee cups in Marvel movies. I mean, that makes sense. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we're trying to find it. But no, I haven't really gotten into those. Just can't be everywhere, like I said. Yeah. I would ask you guys a question. There have been people that I've chatted with on sites that, well, two things. I think that you had said before, one thing not to grade are sketch cards. I almost think the other thing is, like, I do have a couple Star Wars cards. My oldest kid really likes Star Wars. So there were a couple tops on demand, like the little 20 card sets where you get one autograph per.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Like I got a couple of the Sam Jackson 1-of-1 autographs. Like, ooh. I haven't sent anything in to PSA in months because of the pandemic. They were shut down for a long time and whatnot. I'm going to get those graded, but I'll probably just get them graded authentic just to protect them. But I wouldn't grade them because it's a 1-of-1 that sells itself and it's autographed. Right. I don't think the difference between an 8 and a 9 matters a lot, but I would like it slabbed just for protection. Yeah. So I think 1-of-1s, I don't know if I would pay for anything other than authentic. Just keep it cheaper. You know what I mean? Love that. Just keep it protected. But there have been a couple of people that I've said, hey, I have these Iron Man cards, especially the ones where you could buy them. Like, other people bought them and then I bought them from them. Like, and I haven't bought an Iron Man card in probably like 5 or 6 years. So I was dealing with a different price line when I bought them. And they're like, that's terrible to grade. They're not in the little hard plastic with a little gold sticker that goes. Oh, the archive sticker. Yes. So there are people who are like, you know, I wouldn't even pay for that card because it doesn't have the gold sticker. And it seemed like there are a lot of people, and I was surprised that other people were jumping in on, why would you pull it out of there? That's how you know it's authentic. I'm like, you could hot glue a stupid gold sticker onto I don't know how much that. People seem to think that was the end all be all. I'd be curious, since you guys are closer to that, I would be curious to know what your opinion is on that, because I felt like I was in some sort of Twilight Zone when I was like, I'd rather have a card encased and sealed than have a gold sticker on the top of the plastic. Like,
so we're talking about the Rittenhouse ones where they put the gold. Yes. In fact, I've got a couple here actually from the James Bond set of the
like people multi-case incentives. In those stickers, I'm like, I'll cut the sticker and I'll grade the card. Like,
you know,
I'd be
for
curious
me,
to know what your opinion on it is.
So I recently bought a card that was from DC. So it was a DC sketch card of Robin, and it was on our archive case hit, right? So it was one of the rare cards where you had to buy a case in order to receive this special sketch, and it has the gold sticker on it, but the card's not in a penny sleeve. The card is in a top holder with that gold sticker. And does that bother me? 100%. Do I want to take it out there and put it in a penny sleeve? 100%. But here's the thing. Sometimes those cards for me, when I buy them, I really like them and I want to keep them, right? I have this kind of instinct that I've developed many times, which fails me. Sometimes it helps me out. It doesn't matter. Where I'm like, okay, am I going to keep this card forever in my collection? Right. And that's the only reason I haven't taken it out and rip the sticker and put it in a proper penny sleeve and keep the sketch card without it just touching straight top loader. I know that sounds crazy that bothers me, but that's the only reason I haven't done it yet, because I have a feeling that it might not be here as a forever card, right? Mm-hmm. I have seen collectors who want that gold sticker, that want that card in the way it was distributed. I have seen that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's me. I'm putting my hand up.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. That's right.
I just prefer it. But I think you're talking about a very different thing when you're talking about, okay, someone posted something on the group the other day about a Marvel Universe 1990 hologram, saying that it felt a bit off. And it was like, well, the production quality varied on those, and who... Seriously, for a card that mass produced and that low in value, why would anyone do a knockoff of it? So it's like, it's kind of, you've got to kind of have a bit of pragmatism about it when you're looking at that. For a sketch card, no, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's not. But for something that can be forged, which is an autograph, then I can kind of see why you would want to remove it and authenticate it like that. If from kind of Brian's and from many sports kind of approaches, you'd want that peace of mind for the value of the card. For me, I'd be happy to own it. So that's kind of my difference.
And you can still forge a sticker and that top loader, like Brian was saying. Yeah. So, I mean, that doesn't matter either. I guess from my standpoint then, so I guess my bigger question would be this. For that Iron Man card you're talking about, or for these autos, is there an embossed, like a stamp or anything on the card? So it's just the autograph.
Even embossed have been forged. There was an NFL set in the 90s Pro Line where there were, Don Shula autographs and Art Shell autographs and Andre Reed autographs and different NFL players and stuff. And they were finding people that had made the device to crimp the bottom left of the card and whatnot. And those were being counterfeited and whatnot. So, like, even a crimp doesn't, even from a sports point of view, like, that
it doesn't say anything.
Yeah, that doesn't do anything because...
Well, then grading it is the answer.
Well, I'm familiar with an example where cards have been documented as being counterfeited and they were crimped. So...
Wow. Well, then that's really what the grade comes down to, right? Because if you're sending it into PSA or BGS or whatever, they can look at the card and hopefully detect if it's a forgery or not. And then with the grade on there, I guess if I had the choice, and I'm new to the MCU side of this, right? But from my knowledge in cards, if I'm looking at a card that's still sealed in a top loader with the archive sticker, if I didn't know any better, that's the one I would think to trust more. But especially after having this conversation, I would prefer the one that's been graded by a PSA or PGS, I think it is, right?
If it was an autograph.
If it was the same card, if it's graded, then I'm going to assume that professionals have looked at it, whoever these people are, right? And that there was a decision that card was not a forgery and graded and authenticated, as opposed to seeing a card that just showed up on the market and a top loaded and an archive sticker that easily could have been gotten from whatever or reproduced, right? Yeah. Those pieces are definitely not hard to, I myself, have done Photoshop, have done plenty of work in web design and graphic design and so forth. And I can see how those pieces can be easily duplicated. For anybody who's going to do that, the sheer amount of number of things you would have to create just to make it worth it right, is what's going to call you out. I did hear a horror story, which Ian would be interested in. Brian, I don't know how much you know about this, but when sketch cards first came out, there was something called a sketchograph, and that was the name of the card. And these were all done by artists, and they're very plain sketches. They're not difficult sketches. They're very clean. And they were done by big comic book artists, very, prestigious pieces. I had a friend who bought like 500 of these in a lot sale. All of them were forgeries, and all of them had the stamp on them as well, because they were embossed with the little stamp thing, and all of them were forgeries, all of them. And it was a lot piece that he bought, and he realized they were all forgery cards. So it does exist. Cards are being cut and so forth, but I see the benefit in something having the authentication of being graded, because that would be my assumption that would not be the forgery. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like if there was going to be forgery.
I think on the non-sports side, I think it's very much a truism that no one's going to bother trying to counterfeit I was going to say a £1 note, but we have coins now, a $1 bill. It's going to be the 50s and the 100s that people are going to want to counterfeit. So the only occurrence I've heard of, and this ties back to what you were saying about Rittenhouse autos earlier, Brian, is on that first Star Trek set. There were forgeries from that set. That's the only non-sports example I'm aware of, not to say that they haven't happened, that would kind of come close to that, I think. And I think it was Zachary Quinto, Chris Pine, and possibly J.J. Abrams. There's a post about it. There'll probably be one on Blowout, but there's definitely one on NSU Card Talk, where people were sort of comparing them, and it was kind of a big deal. But Rittenhouse do still have that license, and they've produced further sets of Star Trek and have Star Trek Picard set coming along. So I'm not sure how what steps you can take to mitigate that. But I know that first Star Trek movie, probably the exception rather than the rule on the non-sports side. I think the only area, because I know in sports, it's done an awful lot and has been done for decades. People have been doing that for decades because there's so much product and there's so many people going after it, and therefore there's a lot of money in that hobby. It's an awful lot of money. Those deals that the players do with different, card companies and licensing and likeness, endorsements and all that sort of stuff is generally where the money goes. Then the people trying to forge and do that will follow. Is certainly my experience in live event ticketing. It's definitely the case in other things. No one's going to try and scalp 100 tickets for an obscure 80s one-hit wonder. They will for the Foo Fighters. It's that kind of thing, I guess. This is fascinating. How many cases of Endgame did you get through? If you don't mind me asking, I'm just curious.
I only bought a couple boxes of it. I give some to the boys to open up. Like I said, I don't want the Cracker Jack. I want the prize. Right. I would rather go and buy the first card I bought from there was a printing plate of Chris Evans. It's probably the least desirable one. It's the one where you can't see his face. He's in the little spacesuit. The realm. There's a card of him. So I have one of the printing plates from that. But I'm still actually working on Infinity War. I'm going back in time and looking for occasional Guardians stuff.
Wow.
And stuff. So the Infinity stuff, it'll come out on EPAC. There's so many plates and there's so many autographs and stuff like that I think I have a little bit of time. It's not on EPAC yet. So I'm just kind of looking at other stuff as well. So
is that the set you're most excited about to come out?
The Endgame set is impressive, if only they have a pretty good cast. Most of those people have already signed. Holland, Hemsworth, Brolin, Elizabeth Olsen, Jeremy Renner. Haley Atwell, Sebastian Stan, like all those guys have already signed for other products. You know, Sebastian Stan's from the Winter Soldier. Haley Atwell was from, you know, a couple of different things as well, and she also signed for the Agent Carter sets as well.
That's right. Yeah.
So, like, there's the couple new people that are in the Endgame specifically, like John Slattery, who plays like Tony Stark's dad.
Yes.
And
I love him.
Ross Marquand, who played the voice of the Red Skull.
That's right. Yeah. Walking Dead.
Mm-hmm. They're cool. I'm not sure I'm going to buy any of those. Like I said, I have a safe deposit box where I put everything in. So I have a finite amount of room, and like it kind of disciplines me to basically, you know, I'll often ask myself, does it deserve to be in the box? You know what I mean? Does it bring the overall cachet of the box up or down?
Mm-hmm.
So then that helps to make a decision as to whether or not I'm gonna do it and whatnot. So
here's a little trivia thing to tie stuff together, because we were talking about Angel earlier on. No, Buffy. Sorry, and Norrin and I are big Angel fans. We've talked about.
Yeah, I love Angel and Buffy.
We love Fred.
Yeah.
Amy Acker, I think it is.
Yes, that's right. Which reminds me, I still need to finish season 2 of Dollhouse. Anyway, I'm big into Firefly as well. I've got a master set of the Inkworks Firefly, so I've got all of those in the binder. So satisfying when you get a binder for your set. And Serenity I didn't do, but I didn't finish. So I think that's one thing I probably will try and do, is track down all the rest of that cast autographs, because Shepherd Book, can't remember the actor's name, has passed away now. Anyway, I digress. Trivia tip. So in the I want to say, don't think is it Avengers? Anyway, the kind of, I think it's the first Avengers movie. He's talking to Loki and giving him his marching orders and that. The guy who played that character kind of out on that space.
Yeah,
asteroid, that was Alexis Denisov.
Yes, who played the Watcher.
Exactly. Yeah. Wesley Wyndham Price.
He married Willow.
Yeah.
Yes, they're still husband and wife.
They are indeed. So there's a little tie together of the universes. Yeah.
That's
and
nice.
I'm sure we can tie that into the American Pie verse somehow, but I'm not sure how I'm sure if you get a flow chart, it's like 6 degrees of.
I'll work on it this weekend.
Let's do that.
I'll draw some connections.
It is fascinating. The thing is, there's so many things you can collect, and I'm evidence of where that falls down on a limited budget. So I admire that you've got that focus. I really do. Hats off to you on that front. And it's a lovely little kind of niche to get into. I guess my question would be, if anyone kind of, because we do have people who listen who are kind of just coming into collecting and they're not sure what they're going to go for, is if folk were going to go into the MCU sets and were going to decide to go for the top end, the cream on the top, what would your advice be? Someone new coming into that now that train's already moving.
Kind of like buying a Mantle or DiMaggio, is put money away and make your. If you go to the Blowout Forum and go to the vintage section, you'll hear about like, I only make a purchase 2 or 3 times a year, but I'm buying this 53 Topps Mantle or whatever. They're whatever their holy grail is.
Yeah.
You know, I always wanted to get one of the Harrison Ford Indiana Jones cards. I never could do it because they were always like $5, $6, $7 grand. I was like, I'm not doing that. But I would definitely. Like I said, do we have rookie cards? I'm not sure if that'll ever be seen that way. Like Derek Jeter is a very distinct 93 SP rookie card. Like the Downey, I guess, is one. You know, Chris Evans in Civil War is his first autograph.
Yeah.
You know, do you want to get the single card? The single card probably is more desirable than even the duels. There's a Renner. There's 3 duels. There's the one with Sebastian Stan, so it's kind of like the buddies. There's an Evans with a Renner. So it's 2 of the Avengers, which is kind of cool. My youngest and I debate. We argue over which one's the better card. And then the third one is Evans and Emily Van Camp. Who,
yes.
Oh, yes.
So, I don't have that one, but we have the art too. But I would probably just do the single autograph. The Chris Pratt I think is great. The Zoe Saldana, if you can find one. I would not buy the Guardians of the Galaxy 2 ones. They're mass produced. Plus, she only signed initials. In the movie theaters and just online, I'm surprised at Tom Holland. And you can misstep. I would only say take a look at the Tobey Maguire autographs and the Andrew Garfield autographs. So, I have several of both, and I don't think, they're not really going up, but they're kind of staying flat or maybe going down ever so slightly. So this isn't perfect. But I think the Hollands are decent. I think I'm not a big fan in the end game of they have autograph cards with little diamonds built into the card.
Oh, are they the exquisite ones?
They're kind of like those, yeah. So the ones that are numbered to 25 and 49 and that sort of thing. I don't know if that is necessary. That's where I think we're jumping the shark a little bit.
Yeah.
But I would just go with those people, and also which ones are going to be real. Chris Hemsworth, Bad Times at the El Royale. He was in the Seal movie. He was in Red Dawn. He was in a bunch of other things. Chris Evans in Knives Out. If you have a guess as to which actor might become, I kind of think a lot of these guys are going to be this generation's Brat Pack.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So you got your Downey and Pratt and Hemsworth and Evans, and you could throw Scarlett in there if she ever signs a card. Ruffalo doesn't. If any of those guys sign, game on. There's plenty of collectors, and you guys know this, who prefer the female characters. So I think Elizabeth Olsen, her cards are. I'm surprised how much they sell for. They're really doing pretty well. Haley Atwell, maybe not so much, but just keep looking. And I think, like I said, if you really think these are going to be international, then that blowout post recently where a guy mentioned the Jay Chow, it certainly wasn't me, but it was an astute observation, because when you look at these next Marvel movies, if there are going to be stars that are going to be popular in other areas of the world, then, having a chance to get an autograph card, you may see the demand spike because of other areas, not just us.
Yeah.
Smart.
So, I would just keep an eye on all of that stuff as well. Just kind of like in baseball, you're looking at stats and what team they're on. Are they going to play in the postseason? And, all that sort of, just a lot of different factors to look at it. I don't know if I can give a great answer, but
no, that's fine.
I think it's a great answer.
I'm pretty open. I think I'm pretty open in where I'm still buying. So
absolutely.
I'm really excited to see how with the channels that Disney's putting out there, where they're bridging these actors from the cinematic universe into the television universe, like WandaVision and all these shows.
Yep.
Oh yes.
Yeah. I feel like if those things have card sets, that's something to look into. But also the Phase 5 that's coming up, right? There are so many titles, like Doctor Strange is going to introduce Ghost Rider or somebody. You know what I mean? Those will be first appearances in MCU cards. So I'd be interested to see what those do as well.
Yeah, I definitely think we definitely would like a Bettany card as well. He doesn't have one.
Yeah,
he doesn't have an autograph card. There's still a lot of people that they could get that I would love to see. You know what I mean? Rudd.
Yes.
The rest of the original Avengers. Bettany. Some others. So. Yeah, I definitely think it's going to become a thing. And the other thing is, and the other question, the last question maybe I would ask is that because of EPAC, there's so many. I'd be curious to hear your guys' opinion real quick on this, since you guys are on EPAC, correct?
Oh, yeah.
You guys know about the achievements, right? So somebody this past week hit the Cumberbatch Shadowbox autograph. They built this set of Indigos.
Oh, I saw that. Yes.
Yeah, crazy.
So that's a great card. I have one Doctor Strange, the Vishani Vestments, not the prescription script card. That's the other version of the autograph card. But there's only like 5 or 10 of these letterbox Shadowbox cards or whatever. I mean, it's insanely rare. There's so many different wild. There's Holland autographs. There's Brolin. There's gold numbered to 15. There's all these different versions. It'll be interesting to see who can keep up with it and who can catalog it and who can come up with a good value. And they're so rare. Are they even going to have a value that anybody's going to know? You know what I mean? Like, I'd be curious to get your guys' opinion. Like, to me, I'm almost just would rather stay with the Pratt and the Downies. These other cards are insanely cool.
Yeah.
Or like, if a tree falls in the woods and nobody sees it, is it there? Like, how many people even know these cards exist?
I love that.
A lot of people.
That's brilliant what you said. I really love that idea because e-Pack Achievements is 100% like that. We've had episodes recently where we've hunted down, and you've dabbled a little bit on the Fleer Ultra Spider-Man, so you know what that's like. Where we've gotten like rainbows from them, right? Mm-hmm. Well, no one knows those cards, right? They don't really exist all that often, right? Especially the web rainbows, right? Those are so insanely difficult to get. You might know the base rainbow, but the web rainbow hardly ever comes up. And there was always speculation, especially when Ian and I first started going for these things. People were like, don't worry about the web. It's never going to happen. Just be good with, getting the one printing plate and the rest of the cards. And then all of a sudden, because the product's been out for so long.
And the original art. We were able to pick these up. So for e-Pack Achievements in the future, what I'm seeing in terms of how people are going to price them is that they're very much going to factor in the amount of cases they had to buy to the actual achievement. Oh, yes.
And we've seen a little bit of this when we've had a set that came out recently. I forget the set. Ian knows this. Maybe it's Marvel 80th, where you could get the original art as the
Marvel
achievement.
80th. Yeah.
And that original art comic book pages usually sell anywhere between 15 to 2,000. And I think a lot of people can't value those pages any higher than that because they're not specific to the set. It was a nice art. It was a nice achievement thing and so forth, but people can't value that any higher. I think the casual viewer who goes on eBay and all of a sudden sees this card that was an achievement card and they have no idea what e-Pack is going to be a skeptic on what this actually is, whether it's authentic or not.
Is it a real card?
It's a real card, right?
They're going to assume e-Pack is just a digital card.
Right. Man, we have callers and people we talk to all the time in the group that are like, well, e-Pack only does digital, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of these rainbows, a lot of these pieces are getting picked up, maybe not for great prices because you have to buy so much product because it's a gamble, it's gambling, but they are picking them up. I think the only way those cards are going to sell for high prices is to the very small audience that knows what they are and are willing to pay them, or e-Pack actually finally starts catching on. They come up with an app on the phone. It becomes a little more accessible to people. They change their layout on the site. It's either going to change with the popularity of the site, or the audience is going to be so small on that achievement that the price for that card is going to be very, very, very difficult to gauge. You're not going to have a large audience fighting for that one card, I don't think.
Or one of the things that occurred to me is that, especially with e-Pack, where they can control how many are out in the wild because they know how many have been broken, is introduce some form of the population stat.
Yep.
Where, there's only 99 of these, 62 of them are in population.
Yep.
So that you know how many are out there and how many are left to go for.
I don't think
they'll ever do that because they want people to still be buying stuff.
Hopefully when products start selling out, that's what I'm hoping, because that really does bother me. I think people should know, like Topps does. Yeah. Well,
Topps releases the print run, but after they've sold them all,
See, and that's my problem with Upper Deck right now. My critique would be that they really should start thinking about once a product sells out, they should put some figures for people so they know what's in market. Absolutely. Just to counteract forgeries, counteract sales, try to give people some kind of a gauge, because we've made some some of these rainbows that require like 100 cards, physical cards, to claim. And it's like, well, then how do I price this one card? And I've seen examples for that. If you go to eBay now and look at what those Fleer Ultra Spider-Man rainbows are up there for, the price is ranging pretty significantly.
All over the place.
It's all over the place. There's not a proper gauge on that whatsoever, because people are thinking, well, if I made a web rainbow, which took 100 cards, and this was like a web once per pack, this is a specific character, right? What do I price that as? Because are there 5 of them out there? Are there 10 of them out there? The product hasn't sold out yet. And then they reset when you claim the cards. So those 100 web cards that I've spent, so long collecting are suddenly back into the market until the product sells out. Like, I'm just not sure where those physical cards are going.
You could have had them exported and shipped to you. And had
right. So I could have just taken the 100 and been done. And does that mean
if everyone did that'd completely bugger up their business model?
Right, that would mess them all up, because then you couldn't claim those achievements.
They'd still earn the 25 cents.
There's not a lot of transparency there. And because there's not a lot of transparency there, it makes it very hard for collectors to accurately gauge this. So I think people are going to be getting some really good deals. I think some people are going to be sitting on these cards until they get to the price that they feel it should be. And that's going to be the discrepancy. But right now,
willing to pay as well.
I don't think there's a straight answer for it, to be honest. I think people are going to gauge them extremely high or be reasonable, and people are going to make out like bandits. I don't know.
I'm going to start circling us into land, gents, and return your tray tables to the upright position, please. Okay. The bar has closed. So we did a little poll. I did 2 polls on MCCW. So we've got about 1,100 members. And the poll was, so the first poll I did, MCU sets, love them, don't care for them, dabble a bit, or very into the autos / higher end of them? Let us know, please. And I put these polls in the field, as it were, after you dropped us a line, Brian, because I thought, I'm just going to see, what's out there. So 3 options I put on them, but because as with Facebook, people can add a 4th. So first poll, 48% said no, don't touch them. 40% said dabble a bit, but prefer art-based sets. Yes, really into them was 11%. And just 1% said yes, but only into the comic-related character inserts, plus Stan Lee and other comic artist autos. So you'll know this, Brian. A lot of these sets have a subset of kind of comic covers, or Doctor Strange has one called Strange Moments, I think. And Infinity War has one as well, which is the covers of the sets. And I actually have started going after those little subsets on EPAC myself, because that's kind of what
hit me on EPAC. I'll give you all of them.
Oh, bless you, sir. I was going to ask you, actually, because you're not you probably sell the sketches you pull, I would have thought.
Yeah, I've only got a couple. I've traded them with a couple of the collectors.
Yeah, if you ever get Black Cat, let me know. Because randomly she pops up in MCU sets, which always cracks me up, because she's not in the films and she's nothing to do with any of the films. And yet I've got a Captain America card, I've got a Thor card, I've got one from Far From Home, got 2 from Far From Home, of Black Cat. I've got Black Panther one as well. I don't mind. I don't mind. I love it.
That would be really cool if they do like a retroactive thing. Sorry, I had to say that randomly. Why did I do that? Go ahead, Ian.
That's quite all right. No, I quite like chasing random MCU sketch card. So I like to get at least one from every set with Black Cat on, because it's kind of a random thing for me. I like it. Anyway, so then I waited a few days for that to run, and then I posted a follow-up poll. So as a follow-up to the MCU set poll from a few days back, for those who do or have gone into the MCU sets, was it 4? So the full set experience was 35% of people. Just the autos, top end especially, was 25%. So that's a quarter. The comic art subset, if it has one, was 19%. sketch cards wasn't in mine, so someone added that, and 16% of people have gone for sketch cards. And 2 was anything, as I love the film, so that was just 6% of people, which I thought was interesting. I should add that on the first poll, Jalen Warner, good evening, Jay, you're a monkey, added an option, what's MCU?
There's always one.
There's always one.
Let's just have a moment where we just give him a quiet, stern stare, which works really well on audio. Jay, we love you. Don't ever change. But that made me laugh. So I think it's interesting. I think for the people who go after Marvel cards, I think that what that tells me is that the MCU sets are the smaller appeal. I think more people who aren't into Marvel cards go for the MCU sets, like yourself, for different kind of angles.
I'm happy to be there. So
which is cool. Which is absolutely cool again. The good thing is that people who've gone after MCU cards, I know, have then trickled into the art sets and have come into the group. So it's interesting because it's kind of a tentpole feeder for Marvel cards.
Yeah, I'd like to see more MCU posts, man. I don't feel like we get enough, to be honest. Just because I am very much on the investment side of cards, and I do like graded cards, and I do like the longevity of cards. I mean, that's always just been, I love all that speculation stuff. I foam at the mouth at it. I just find it so fascinating and interesting. I do. I really love that stuff. I do.
I've never heard you say that you foam at the mouth,
man.
Anything.
Pretty good. I actually do, because I love watching all those kind of videos and seeing people's, where they're seeing the markets going and all that kind of good stuff. I like to see more posts. If I could talk to the guy who, also is from Japan or China who makes those posts, I would. I've mentioned a couple things to him. We've had a few nice exchanges.
We assume it's a fella, even, because that's the thing. I can't read any of the stuff on his profile because it's all in.
I have to do the race
that I don't understand. So, which is
I have to do the translation stuff as well. But I think that is a big thing that's missing in the group.
Yeah.
Is the MCU angle. And Brian, I'm going to say this to you, brother. I think you should be the head of that. I think you should kind of bring us into the forefront on this.
You're welcome anytime. Man. There are people in our group who collect all sorts of different aspects of Marvel cards.
Yeah.
So, feel free to join them. But it sounds like you're getting hands full with your boys and with your other bits. But you're more than welcome anytime, of course.
Yeah, man. Some live breaks. I'd love to see that. That'd be sick. Yeah,
I would absolutely love to have you. Do you kind of share your collection in any way? I mean, obviously, we just talked about the group. Do you have an Instagram, or do you do anything like that where you kind of show off your cards at all, or do you just keep it?
No, actually, I don't. I don't want to. I'm really not here to brag. I mean, you guys, anybody can think whatever they want. I don't care. But, basically it's just like anybody else, just being really geeked and, like you said, go back to the passion and that sort of thing. And it was my little personal it was my little personal grail. I personally took a ton of joy out of those movies and still do. I'm probably wrapped up in it a little, maybe even a little more. We've gone to a couple Comic-Cons and we've met Hemsworth and we've met Evans and had my kids have pictures with Hiddleston and Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan, who are really cool.
Nice.
And my youngest, whose favorite character is Captain America, we bought a big metal Captain America shield, and it's got a bunch of signatures on it. So, it's really been a thing in our house to really be knee deep in it. And the cards, I just think, have great potential. And I'm trying to be as Vulcan, and I know I'm being a fanboy maybe to a point, but if you look at the print run and just the lack of sets and the amount of cards period, and you look at the global desire of these cards, like I said, some of I would say 5 of the last 7 have not been shipped to the US global shipping program. Erlanger, Kentucky, send it via eBay, like a lot of these things are going to Japan and China and Hong Kong. So I definitely think there's a market. And like I said, you've seen the videos where all these people are geeking out in all these different places. Like, to me, it just seems like if history is your guide and you try and guess, which players, Ichiro, his cards did really well for a while because people were buying them in other areas, that sort of thing. Like, if history is your guide, like, these things have some real potential. I just hope that the card companies don't screw it up by, like you said, with the Carrie Fishers and printing autographs of, the Clone Wars, and the guy that took over for Peter Mayhew. Now he's got autograph cards as well. You know what I mean? It's like they're really
overproducing sticker sheets, all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
like they're still cranking these things out in, like, how many Nindum autograph cards, how many different sets do you need a card of him? You know what I mean? Like,
no, it's a lot.
I wouldn't mind just having one.
but as long as, like, if there's certain actors that don't like signing, I'm like, great. And, there's some that are signing a little more, and, like, we're just going to collect what we enjoy and let the chips fall where they may. And I've actually been pretty lucky. I think I did better doing this than just sticking with PSA 4 and 5 Mickey Mantle card. You know what? And I'm not trying to slam on those, but I think it just didn't work. It didn't work for me. The boys didn't like it. At the end of the day, it's about them and giving them something that they will have an emotional attachment to. And if I can make them a little money along the way, then God bless.
No, I feel I'm definitely inspired by your story and how you came about this, and very glad you shared it with us, man. Like, in all seriousness, like, again, this is all the type of stuff that I love to hear about, and I love to hear about these decisions on how these collections build and sustain themselves, and what you've done with your family and this in your own little card community you have going on there of card breakers. I think it's wonderful, and I mad respect for what you're doing, and a little jealous because I'm very, you know what I mean? I'm like, man, this is actually a really very smart thing to be so ahead of the curve, and to kind of start seeing kind of the future, right? Very much a trendsetter, and I think, man, I applaud you, man. Very cool. Very cool.
Oh, hats off to you. Thank you, Brian, for coming on. Thank you for reaching out to us and, just helping us to, include another area that we're not able to talk about. I would say to anyone listening, if there's stuff you want to hear about, tell us, and chances are, like Brian here, we'll invite you to come on. And if you're up for it, you're up for it. If not, we'll still talk about it. On closing, I would say that I have a Matt Salinger PSA 9 card here, which I'm sure you'll be very envious of. Silence from both of you. Silence from both of you. I don't actually have that, but that is the man who played Captain America in the 1990 movie.
No,
right.
There's a deep cut. I know
who that is. That guy's
Matt Salinger. Popular. Also in that film, Ronnie Cox, Ned Beatty, Darren McGavin. Brilliant. Now, where is he now? Matt Salinger.
He's doing great work.
He's doing great work.
I think he's
let's have a look.
Designing rockets.
Let's have a look. Sure. IMDb. He was born in 1960. What's he in? He's not been in anything for quite a while, according to this.
Well, he hit the Grail.
Oh, no, he has been in some stuff. None of it I've heard of. Oh, well, anyway, Matt, thank you very much. And Brian, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brian, do you know how we finish our episodes?
No, but I bet you're going to tell me.
Oh,
see, look at that.
Oh, you see, we say, enjoy collecting. So I'd very much love it if you would lead us out.
Just enjoy collecting. Take us out.
Enjoy collecting. I certainly am.
Wow, yes. Marvelous. Thank you very much.
Perfect.
Thanks for listening to the Marvel Card Collectors Podcast. You can subscribe via our home on anchor.fm/MCCP. Leave us a message via that link with questions, comments, or just to say hi, and we may even play on the show. We're also on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms. Our podcast is at the MCC Pod on Facebook and Twitter, and you can find links on our Facebook page to the two groups MCCW, Marvel Card Collectors Worldwide, and MMC, Marvel Masterpieces Collectors. On Instagram, find us at MM Collectors and at Sketch Card Hive. The great music we use is called Rocket Power by Kevin MacLeod. Thanks to the collectors, artists and creators who support the Marvel Cards Fan Collective. We'll see you next time, and remember, it's a small hobby but a fun one. Make mine Marvel and enjoy collecting.